G'day podcasters, welcome back to Season 6 of True Blue Conversations with your host Adam Bloom, the author of Easy Target, now available at adambloom.com.au. 8 years ago, after returning from 3 tours of Afghanistan and then gaining experience and education in financial planning, Warren Loudon teamed up with fellow veteran Dave Vaughan and started Loudon and Vaughan Private Wealth, founded with the underlying belief that every person matters and every dollar counts, providing comprehensive tailored financial advice and wealth management services for you and your family. Loudon and Vaughan will guide you towards your financial goals with integrity and transparency. Whether you're planning for retirement, investing for the future, or managing your family's wealth, they've got you covered. Visit loudonandvaughan.com.au or call 02 9538 2704 to book a meeting with Warren today.
G'day, welcome back to True Blue Conversations. I'm Adam Bloom. Today I'm joined by former New South Wales police officer, detective, senior constable, Deb Locke. And Deb has got an absolutely amazing story to share with us of life in the New South Wales Police in the early 1980s right through to the mid-1990s, in probably New South Wales's, what we say, Deb, most challenging time of the police force, you would say?
It was challenging and very enlightening for many people.
So, Deb, welcome to True Blue Conversations. It's an absolute honour and a privilege to have you on and share your story. So, Deb, before we get into...
Thanks, Adam.
Before we get into your career in the New South Wales Police, let's go back to a young Debbie Locke. Let's go back to your childhood. What was that like for you growing up, and what school did you go to, and did you have any brothers and sisters? And yeah, tell me a little bit about you.
I've got to go back. I guess to give a clear picture of my family, I have to go back to my grandparents. Both of my grandparents were shot at Gallipoli, and they both were early in the early 300s to sign up for World War I, and they went over on the Wandilla ship. And there's a letter written by my grandfather's sister about how he'd been arrested by the Turks and captured, and his fingers had been blown off, but they'd bandaged him tight enough that he'd survived from the massive bleeding he'd had. And him and another bloke with a broken leg escaped during the night. They dragged themselves when everyone fell asleep and escaped. Both my grandfathers were chronic alcoholics and addicts when they came back from the war. And the only memories I have of all my grandparents is with them being very drunk. And both my parents were alcoholics and addicts. And so I was very isolated in an old farmhouse. And my mother had my brother when she was 14. And she didn't want any other children, you know. She was at such a young age. She was taken into St Stephen's Church in Macquarie Street with a lot of shame, and all the grandparents had to be there, and they married her, and she had a best dress on, and it was a black dress, and all the 4 grandparents had to sign the wedding certificate to approve of it. And she had a 10-pound baby and never wanted to have another child. So 18 years later, she was pretty broken and devastated, and, you know, she hated me. They both hated me, you know. I used to get told constantly that I'd ruined their lives, and by the time I was born, they were very cooked. They were very gone in their addiction. And when I was born, all my baby teeth were black. She tried to abort me. She tried to jump out of a car and ruined one of her shoes, dragging her foot along the ground. She just never wanted me. But I don't know at what age she decided that I was just going to be their scapegoat, and I was going to look after them until they died.
So really tough childhood. And for you, is that where you think your mental toughness started to grow in that environment, and for what set you up for what would happen later on in your policing career?
Irene was the scariest person I ever met in my life. And I came up across some big dudes. And this 5'1" whirlwind psychopath, nothing gave me better training ground than having to deal with Roger. You know, it was kindergarten. What was dished up to me was kindergarten to what Oren was capable of.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And even from birth, I had to call them Oren and John. You know, in primary school, people would go, "Who's this Oren and John you're talking about?" And back in those days, kids never called their parents by their first name, especially in primary school. But
well, it's not it's deemed as not respectful. Like you, mum and dad, you like.
Yeah, but my family, like my grandfather rode a Harley. My uncles used to do the Wall of Death. I had other members in the family that were affiliated with patch-wearing bikies, and yeah, there wasn't much class. I remember Aaron used to always go, we were better than this other family in Glenorrhea because they had dirt floors. We didn't have dirt floors. They were the only mob that she could say was we were better than.
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay. And for you, how were you at school? Were you pretty good at school?
Adam, where do I start? I had learning difficulties in that I couldn't write my name at 10. It was pretty horrendous. You know, I've got autism. Most of the people in my family have autism. And, you know, luckily the old farm, we had my grandparents' farm. When I was young, when I was first born, we lived on a poultry farm at Kellyville. And then when my grandparents died, we moved to the old farmhouse. It originally was 109 acres. Mm-hmm. When my parents died, I inherited an acre and a quarter. So that'll show you what addiction can do to a family. And there was this old lady that had bought 5 acres up the back, and she could hear the yelling and screaming that went on. Everyone knew what our family was like. Everyone, you know, kids were told not to come near me because I came from that family. You know, we had people in the paper for arrests they'd had in that. And, you know, my father was a pedophile. You know, there was complaints about when the kids came for cracked eggs at the poultry farm. And so, you know, I was put up on the backstage in primary school and I couldn't read or write. And I'd be locked in a storeroom and I'd get caned. And what happened was this old, Mrs. Case her name was, she was an old retired teacher. And, you know, angels happen in life. People come into your life at times to make a difference, to save you. And this woman was just disgusted with what was going on. And everyone turned a blind eye to what was happening. But she went, you were going to learn to read and write. And every afternoon she'd call me over the fence and she'd make me go and sit down with her in a lounge room. And it was hell to me. And she'd make me read this little yellow duck book. And, you know, every afternoon I'd have to read this little yellow duck book and it just killed me. And she worked with me until I could read and write. I still can't do maths. She didn't go that far. She didn't have that much time. She died of old age. But that woman, like I wouldn't be a published author now, except for that woman saw what was going on and took pity on me. And she said, you know, you have to learn to read and write. Because no one cared. Like Oren and John didn't care I couldn't read and write because, you know, I was there to work in the paddock and supply them with money and look after them. So, you know, that was a big turning point in my life that I learnt to read and write.
So for you, what was your first job, Deb, and how old were you?
I was 12 and I used to work in the paddock on a farm up the road with my beautiful friend Carmela, and I'm still friends with her today. She is gorgeous. And, you know, we'd bud carnations and we'd listen to Elvis music, you know, and we just came back from an Elvis cruise. We go to Katoomba, we go to all the Elvis, we are such dags. And we used to dream about how we were going to have 6 children and escape and have a wonderful life. And we were both just working our guts out after school and all weekends. My first day at work, my parents dropped me off at 7 o'clock in the morning. They went and got pissed. And they forgot about me, and it was nearly dark, and they've gone, oh, we've got to go get the kid. And they drove back and got me at 7 at night. So my first shift ever was a 12-hour shift, and I was hungry, I was cold, I was tired, and that was the start of my working career.
Yeah, right. And for you, with the environment you were in, where did your passion come to join the New South Wales Police? Because you joined the New South Wales Police in 1984. Where did that come from? Where was the for you to want to join New South Wales Police when, at that time, there was really not a lot of, well, I guess for your environment, you could have gone the other way. Where did that come from?
There was a number of contributing factors. Irene had a big hit list, and she had people she wanted to get. So I think she figured having a child in the police force would be an advantage to her. She used to tell me at times I'd do that, and she believed that I'd be doing school lecturing and doing sexual assaults, which what the women were doing up until 1982. I joined in 1984. She didn't know that things had changed. I'd also seen police corruption. I'd seen massive misjustice happen. And, I think being on the autistic spectrum, I have a very strong sense of right and wrong, and I have a sense of rules. I follow rules. This is a rule. You do it. And to get in through those gates at Redfern was the hardest thing I ever did. I still, my typing and my reading and and being a woman, and then the women had to be 5'7", and I sort of stretched myself a lot to pass that barricade, and then the running and the exercise to get in, you had to be as good as the men. It was equal with the men, and I used to run and run and run for miles every day to get fit enough, and yet still I wasn't. I was struggling. I was at the back of the whole class, and there was 4 girls in our class, and there was 3 classes in the year that year in April at Redfern, and this Aboriginal guy that was in the class with me, he used to come back. He'd been nearly finished. He was really fit. And he'd come back and he'd get me, and he was just going, "You're gonna get in too. You and I are getting in." And we were both struggling, and he'd push me over the line. He'd come back and I'd just make it each time. And they lost a really good person when they kicked him out on his academic. It was just wrong because he had so much to offer, that guy. I don't even know who he was. I can't remember his name. I know that he used to work in a soft drink factory or something, but I always say thanks to that guy, because I wouldn't have been a cop if it wasn't for him. I wouldn't have made it. So, it was hard. It was hard to get in.
And for you, I know I've had a couple of other police on, Deb, that went through at similar times with you at Redfern, and they talk about Breakfast Hill. And how was Breakfast Hill, Deb?
People would throw up. You'd have to run up and down Breakfast Hill. That was part of the training. And, I won't forget those days.
So for you, how was, obviously you say that the academy life was hard, but how many started and how many finished with you and how long was your training at the academy?
Oh, look, I forget, it was that long ago. It was like 6 weeks at first, or 12 weeks or something, and a lot of marching on the parade ground, and and then typing and going through acts of law and that, but then they'd got you out at a police station, and you did your probation. You had 12 months probation. You'd have a buddy trainer, and But I remember getting my photo on graduation day, and one of the highway patrol was there. We were getting photos against the bikes, and he was mouthing to me, "You're lower than a police dog. A police dog's higher than a policewoman." Like, it was just the most horrendous initiation to get in.
Yeah, right.
The disrespect, and the boys were angry. It was a time of change. It had been a boys' club. They were letting skirts in. The women used to wear dresses and handbags and hats and gloves, and they had to get resign when they got engaged. And so you only had old lesbians and spinsters that stayed, that their career mattered to them. Once a woman. And I don't know magically what their problem was. If they thought that they'd got engaged, they might have sex and they couldn't be near the dog. I remember a couple of my girlfriends, one tried to get in the dog squad, and they told her, "No, you have periods, you can't be in the dog squad, it'll upset the dogs." Another one tried to get into the divers, and they put the blade in back to front when she went under the water to saw through a bit of metal. They just what was dished out to women in those days. 'Cause
Yeah.
they weren't happy. The boys weren't, they weren't happy.
So for you finish your time at the academy, and how was that march out for you, Deb? Was that a proud moment that you'd put your head down, you'd worked hard, and you'd achieved something for you, and no one could take that away from you? And did Irene and John come down to your passing out parade? Do you remember?
They did, and I was the first one in my family to do my HSC. I was the first one to...
I'll join you there. I was the first in my family, so yep.
Yeah, breaking that generational, stereotype. And I was the first one to go to university, and I've done 8 years of uni. And it was... And as a woman, it was massive. I just tried so hard. Like, I always just wanted to make a change. I've always had welfare jobs. I've always tried to help people. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to be an honest cop. I had seen things that weren't honest, and I just wanted to make a difference. I just wanted to do my job. And as a woman, I just got a really hard time. And it wasn't just me. It was other women around me got a hard time too, just because in 82 they started to let the women answer the phones at the cross. Christine Nixon had a couple of uncles that were high up, and that family members and some other girls, and they protested to be allowed to do real police work. And they let them answer the phones. They thought that'll sort the girlies out. And what happened was they found out they were really good at it, and then they let them out in the street, and lo and behold, if it was a violent altercation or a domestic, the girls would diffuse the situation easier than big burly blokes turning up. They actually found that the women were good at their job. It was just ridiculous. Like that in 82, there was still that mentality of women weren't capable.
Because I've heard, Deb, that like my mum came through she went through in nursing in the 70s, but then she said the 80s was a different time. It was you were seen but not heard as a female, and it was a hard time, and for you coming through, that would have been tough. Like you, and and your childhood would have set you up for like mixing it in a real boys club, like it was, as you're saying, it was a boys club. Did you feel that you were ready, like the academy had taught you, right, you're ready to go out into the big bad world and the dangerous world of policing at that time? When you look back now, did you feel ready to go and get on those streets and start policing?
Certainly not. I didn't know what to expect. But when I turned up at the station, they went, just forget everything we taught you at the academy. Now we're going to show you what a true police officer's like.
So where was your first station?
North Sydney.
Okay.
All the girls either went to King's Cross or North Sydney.
Yeah, right. Okay. And do you remember your first shift?
Oh, yeah. I think they put me on the big telephone board. They had, this is crazy. I'm feeling really old now talking to you, Adam. It was like a big wooden board on the wall and all these holes, and you actually got the cords, and you put the cord from the ingoing call into what section in the building that at North Sydney that it had to, like, it was unbelievable.
Yep.
And if you pulled the cords out before the lights went off, you'd nearly get a punch in the head. It was like, if you cut off an officer's phone call, they'd come down to have words with you. And so even the telephones, like, it was manual typewriters. It was, there wasn't mobile phones in 84. It was just a crazy time where you had a situation where you had Chris Murphy running around with his verbal number plates, like an officer's word stood up in court, and this is where the verbal thing came from. They'd go, yeah, oh yes, the magistrate, he said, you're too good for me, Sergeant Bloggs, I did it. And even though there wasn't a signed statement, they'd take the officer's word. And it was a time of change where they started to realise maybe sometimes the cops are bullshitting. Because then these people that had been arrested were going, no, I never said that. And so, signed statements were required. And, we started to see technology happening. You know, we started over the process while I was there, computer systems. We started I remember a mobile phone and a big briefcase, you know, and to the point where when later on in my career, we had hidden radios in glove boxes and hidden aerials. Like the technology, it was a time of technological change, and it was a time where anyone now can be a reporter. You know, you can get your mobile phone, photograph something or video it, and then load it up to the internet for the whole world to see. You know, I came in a time prior to that where paper bags and money were changing hands, and I saw it happen. So anyone that wants to say there's a few bad apples makes me laugh. But I just want to clarify here too, I'm not saying all the New South Wales police was corrupt, but I'm saying that there was systematic corruption in the plain clothes, and that most of the police were absolute heroes and go out every day and risk their life, and they don't know if they're going to come back home at the end of the shift. And that's something they told me at the academy. And they said each shift you go, don't leave in the morning having a fight with your missus, because you may not come home. Of course, they said missus because you know, they were still in the male dominated phrase and thinking. But you know, it was a very antiquated, backwards time. It was Keystone cops at times. You know, the uniformed guys are heroes. You know, the highway patrol are called cockroaches among the other police, and these guys work on their own and they'd give their mother a ticket. But you know, that their thing. But we'd had a time where we'd seen the tow truck rackets in New South Wales Police. We'd seen the windows getting broken in New South Wales Police. There was a little bit of stuff that came to the surface, and in 82, before I joined in 84, we had the situation where Mick Drury was shot through his kitchen window in front of his wife and kids, his two little daughters. And, you know, there was a rule amongst crooks, you know, never hit anyone, never kill anyone in front of their family. And it was just a time where the boys got out of control. The ones playing up had just lost the plot. You know, Nettie Smith had been given a green light, and Abbo Henry and all their mates, and they could do anything below killing a cop. They'd been given permission, and it was a dangerous place for a young girl from Glenorrhea.
Absolutely.
And it was, because I was loud, I was autistic. I tried to be one of the boys. You know, I drank as good as the boys. I ate as good as the boys. I swore better than the boys. You know, I could, if there was a fight on, I'd be in there swinging punches better than the boys. I'd had a good educational grounding from my family of origin, and it was a boys' world, and I wanted to be one of the boys, and it was the greatest disservice I ever did to myself. Looking back now, I just shake my head.
It's interesting you say that, because when you were in that world, Deb, did you, like, you wanted to so badly be one of the boys? Did you have some good male mentors when you were, like, in your younger years of when you were first as a general duties young police officer?
Yes, there were some great cops. There were some great cops that were very honest and very good, and you know, the uniform at North Sydney were amazing at that time. Yeah,
right. And for you, do you remember your first death knock, Deb? And did you have was there any training back then of how to deliver a death knock? And you would have done a lot of death knocks. And back then, was there training, or you just had to do it?
Certainly no training for, like, every day when you go into work as a cop, you don't meet people for a good reason. Everyone's in crisis, and they don't call the cops unless there's a problem. And you see horrific stuff every shift. And at the end of the shift, we'd all go for a drink. You know, we used to go down to Mossman RSL Club. We'd cash our paychecks there. We used to get a paycheck. And you'd have a drink. And when it was a really, really bad situation like that, they'd go, all right, down the pub, have a drink, talk shit, get over it, we'll see you back in the morning. So that was the welfare, that was the support that occurred in the police at that time.
Yeah, right. And for you, I'm thinking far out. Like you would have, and even today, like delivering a death knock would be hard. Like it would be not a lot of training.
Hard to do sober.
Yeah.
You'd certainly have a drink afterwards, Like I've been to, autopsies and that, in the morgue and that, and just bloody awful, And
no amount of training can prepare you for that.
And there wasn't training for it. It wasn't discussed. It was just, pull yourself together and have a drink and get on with your job.
Yeah, right.
And you had to be tough because imagine as a woman, like you've got to back these guys up with a gun. And that's what would be said to me, what street are we in now? What if someone attacks us? I had to be tough to prove to them that I could back them up.
Absolutely.
They're putting their life on the line going out with a girl when most of them hadn't even worked with women before.
Yeah,
or not very much. So they were all dubious of being backed up by a little young blonde. They weren't happy. They weren't happy to have to work with a woman.
Do you remember your first arrest?
Oh, I got my chest kicked in. A drunken guy, and I'm trying to get him in the back of the paddy wagon, and and I went down the cells later on, and it was night time, and I had long pants on, and he said, "I didn't know you were a girl." He started to sober up, and he apologised to me when he was locked in the cells. He went, "I am so sorry." He just didn't expect to see a woman at night swinging punches, trying to pull him into a van. That's how early it was. I was in the job.
But and as you say, Deb, it's you're with the boys, so you have to be as tough as them, and it was getting kicked in the chest. Oh, no thanks. I
had some good bruises.
Yeah, absolutely. So in 1985, Deb, you go into plain clothes and you go to King's Cross.
Yeah, well, I think I got shuffled as a woodchuck over to the Cross. They were doing a rotational thing with the Undercover drug squad.
Yep.
I'd had an incident at North Sydney where I nearly died. I was in the back of the paddy wagon, prison van. Paddy wagon it must have been. And no, it was an actual prison van. I was doing prison van. And because there was a little section at the back, the prisoners were in the back, and then I was in this other little section right in the back, separate to them. And we'd gone to Long Bay Jail and we'd put some prisoners in. I had to search them, and they were screaming and carrying on because it was a woman searching them. And one bloke didn't want me to touch him. And so we do that. We get him into the van. We're heading off, and we go to one of the police stations. We're going to court, and we drop a guy off. We drop another guy off. And then we're driving around. I'm in the back. I'm dizzy. I feel like I'm going to spew, I can't see anything. There's no windows. It's horrible. I'm sitting sideways. I can't breathe. And next thing you know, we pull up with a screech, and all these coppers, a couple of uniform guys, they get in, they pull me out, and there's punches swinging everywhere. And they get this guy out of the back, and they're dragging him in, screaming, into the police station. And what had happened was, I always treat everyone as human beings, And this guy that got out, I said, I wish you all the best today, good luck. And he could see I was a young girl. And he went in and he told them, he said, there's a guy in the back that's got a little replica gun thing in his pants, and he's going to grab a gun off her at the next stop and shoot her in the head. And he'd already killed a woman and two blokes.
Yeah, right.
And so he had nothing to lose, and he was going to escape. And no one could believe that a prisoner would protect a cop, save a cop's life, because everyone would have known what he'd done. And so they, what happened was I never did prison vans again. And there was nothing more said about it. I got moved to the cross very quickly because of what happened. Like they just covered it up because it was a close call. I nearly did die that day.
Yeah,
because he would have got my gun off me pretty bloody easy.
Yeah, okay. Far out.
So there was a lot of situations. Like I'm obviously meant to be here. I've obviously got more stuff to do because I never thought I'd make 30. I've just turned 60 and I'm just pinching myself. I'm going. I'm still, and my mother used to always, as a young kid, say, "You'll die at 60." My grandmother died at 60. My mother died at 59. So I got 60. I got a bit twitchy around 60. I was going, "Oh, I'm gonna die," But then I remembered, I don't do what my family do.
Yeah.
I have broken the generations. I don't have to die at 60.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was obviously in the, as you say, the 80s was in King's Cross it was a wild time, 80s and
hot.
90s.
It was very running hot.
What was day to day like for you as a plain clothes police officer going through the cross? What was that like?
Oh, you had the bikies down the strips. You had all the working girls. Like I got warned by the working girls. Be careful of the detectives in the cross. I found some of the crooks treated me with better respect and kindness than what senior police were because I was a woman. So,
right.
It was a great time. It was an exciting time. It was lively. You had lay girls. You had, it was just, it was a wonderful place for a young girl to work. Like it was just so exciting. So and that's the interesting thing with the background I came from. I was at the cross working as a cop, and Kim Hollingsworth, who was portrayed in Underbelly, she came from a police family. So her father and her uncles were all cops and that, and yet she ended up there as a prostitute. And we have laughed about that many times. How we both ended up working in the cross.
In different circumstances.
In the different roles that we shouldn't have. We both were rebelling against our families.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what happened to us.
So for you say you were told, watch the detectives. Was the corruption in your face at that point, or was it?
Look, it was never in your face. You had to know what was going on. Like a lot of people have said, there was nothing going on. There was a few bad apples, And the thing is, I was portrayed by the Commissioner, Tony Lauer, and it was done as a cartoon in the Telegraph during the Royal Commission, that I was the bad apple because I'd spoken out about what was going on. But the trouble was I was such a loud, obnoxious drunk. Shit would be going on. I'd be there in the middle of it. I'd be there going, whoa, hello, I'm having a drink. And the thing is, I've never, ever called it except for how it was. I call a spade a bloody shovel. And I ended up in lots of interesting situations because I was just hanging out with the boys, being one of the boys drinking, But when money was offered to me, I always pushed it back. I never took a cent. And that was also said by corrupt officers that it was put to them by Wood from the Wood Royal Commission. And they all said, yeah, Debbie never took a cent. I didn't.
We had a moral compass.
Yeah. I just wanted to play. I just wanted to be one of the boys. I wanted to fit in.
Deb, you strike me as someone who is very much a person you're a person of integrity, and you signed up to protect and serve the people of New South Wales. That was your job. Like you.
Absolutely.
And I look at that as to say that, yeah, that's what a police officer does. They're there to protect and serve. Like, the corruption is, like, I look at people who do that and I go, well, you're not a police officer. You're a criminal despite you're masking as a police officer, and that's what it is. That's, like people that take money for, we all say that we won't, Deb, I absolutely commend you because you didn't. It's, like I can see why you would turn, like they swore an oath to protect and serve, and they didn't do it.
Absolutely not. And I had money tried to be pushed onto me, and just just wow, they just didn't know what to do with me. They didn't understand, because I was in that first wave of female detectives. I became a detective, when I went to the gaming squad, and I'd only been in the job a few years. I was still young. I was still in my 20s. It was just ridiculous. And you had to be invited into the detectives. And because I was one of the boys, I got invited in, but they didn't know how to handle me. It was all new territory for them and me. And so, they thought I was cool, and I wasn't cool. I really wasn't detectives material. Like, I remember one night sitting somewhere, I don't know where it was, it's probably a pub, and there was two old guys looking really concerned. And one was highway patrol and one was detectives. And I'd done my high-speed driving through surveillance, because most of my career I was undercover or surveillance, and the highway patrol guy seemed a lot nicer, and he kept saying, "Come to highway patrol, Debbie, come to," and I just thought, oh my God, I'm going to drive myself into a tree and die. Like, I'm going to have to stay sober, and and the other option was going to the cross and working more in the cross and drinking, and I thought, that's really cool. Like, that's really, but I sat there and I tossed and turned. It was another one of those forks in the road, and which way do I go? My life would have been so different if I'd chosen highway patrol. I wouldn't have seen corruption. I would have just been doing my job, and I may have killed myself on the road, but and I had a thing where I wanted to be the first woman on the motorbikes, and I wasn't, but I would have killed myself. So I went down the path of detectives, and they really bloody scared me.
Yeah, right. So I want to talk about that a little bit more. So with that scaring, like, what was it about it, Deb, that scared you the most?
I'd pissed off Roger Rogerson. He hated me. I mean, he's had a few goes at me in the media, and I'm really happy the guy's dead. I'm really happy that he had some time in jail. That's not how he expected to go out. His loyal following seemed to have disappeared with the Glenn McNamara incident and the Jamie Gow being shot. I can't believe he was so old. I kept going. I kept saying to people, why is it that Roger's done so many bad things, and he's out there doing his private inquiry agency stuff, and he's why is it that there's no karma, that there's no justice, And I can tell you, I was doing the happy dance in front of the TV when I saw them arresting him. Like, that was a great day for me, because I'd lost a couple of years of my life hiding from that bastard. And, him being dead is a good thing for the New South Wales Police.
100%. I don't think Deb, I've spoken to a few police officers, and not many, sorry, I'll take that back. I don't think anyone has a really good word to say about him at all. He was a criminal. He was a terrible criminal. And he is a person that just tarnishes the work of what good, honest police did for New South Wales. And yeah, good riddance. I'm glad he's pushing up daisies, because he was a terrible person.
Yeah, but there was a time when they were grooming him to become commissioner. He was highly intelligent, and he'd hold court in Chinese restaurants, and everyone bowed at his feet. And he just did outrageous things, and it was all covered up. And this was the police culture of the time in the 70s and 80s. And it was just so bloody wrong, the things he did and got away with,
And for you, obviously, like, you worked with him out at Parramatta? Was that where
well, it's like he kept haunting me through my police career, Roger. Bloody hell. At Parramatta, I think he was out of the cops then, but he was holding court, with the cops. And in my book, Watching the Detectives, I describe a scene of one night where, they're all, it was a lunch, and then it turned into a dinner because we just kept sitting there drinking. and eating Chinese, and he was there, and there was some used car salesman guys there, and there was a guy, old Chinese guy sitting very demure that had a jewellery store, and it was like a celebration meal because the jewellery store had been robbed, and a few of the cops there were wearing big gold rings, and they were all admiring their rings and celebrating, and there was 2 cars, so there was 4 guys at the table that I'd never seen before or since, and one of them had white jeans on, and they were really getting plastered and celebrating, and anyway, eventually one of them falls under the table, and Roger's going, just leave him under the table, just leave him, because he slipped down on his chair. That's how drunk he was, and we could hear him snoring under the table, and we were laughing, and anyway, he's pooed his pants, and Roger's just lost it, and he's up screaming, and he's going, carry him out, and they put him down in the police car, and but that was the sort of circus I went to, and then when I approached the commissioner about a lot of things, particularly Lenny McPherson, an incident with Lenny McPherson, and I had my fingerprints on a gun licence, and I thought, they just got me. They just kept trying to get me. They kept trying to give me money, and I wouldn't take it. And this detective was pushing the money at me, and physically pushing money at me, and I just wouldn't do what they wanted. And when I went to the commissioner, Tony Lauer, he actually wasn't the commissioner. John Avery was the commissioner, but they said he was about to go, and they gave me Tony Lauer to speak to, and I met in this sort of corridor walkway sort of thing. And Lauer was so angry with me, and he was going, well, you don't know what a detective is. And I'm trying to explain. I kept giving him examples of incidences, and he just kept saying to me and looking at me with disgust, going, you don't know what a detective is. And in the end, he said, you're a whistleblower. And I was so scared. And that's why this is so important to me, because it was another major point in my life where I'd never heard the word whistleblower before, and yet that was to change the path of where my life went that day. And I got the courage up to look at him and go, what is a whistleblower? Because I thought it was a really bad thing. And he went, police who dob in police. And, and that's what I was doing. I was there dobbing them in, because I thought the rules are, and the regulations are, if you see corruption and you don't report it, you're going to go down with them. I was the only imbecile, because of my autism, that believed the police policies and procedures. I was the only idiot that was stupid enough to speak out about what was going on, and and it cost me my police career. It really did. Lauer put me in hiding with in the old hat factory with Michael Drew. He'd been shot in 1982. Irene went mental, going, we're going to be shot too. She was shutting the curtains in the lounge room at night. She was just going, you're an idiot. Sally Ann Huckstep's been killed. You're going to die too. And I think she was more worried she was going to die, that they might hit her by mistake. That'd be Irene. But it was just bloody awful. It was a awful, awful place for a young girl to be.
Because how old were you at that time, Deb?
I would have been, mid-20s,
So still just, and you say you were stupid enough to speak up, but it also saved your life, Deb.
Oh,
Cause,
it did. Because looking back now.
Exactly. Hindsight's a wonderful thing. And if you had as you said, if you had kept going the way you were going, you were drinking. If you had gone highway, you could have wrapped yourself around a tree. Becoming a whistleblower actually because you're still here now. You're 60 years old. You're here. So I don't look at it as if you were stupid, Deb, because you had a moral compass and you did the right thing.
And I just rat shit cunning too, just coming from a family, because they offered to change my name and move me to Queensland. When Mick first got shot, they moved into America for a couple of years, and they were very desperate to put me in a NCA, National Crime Authority house, and word had got back to me that there'd been a number of suicides that had happened to internal witnesses, and about a woman that put a plastic bag over her head and held it and suffocated herself. Well, that wouldn't be possible. You'd let go and pass out and be able to breathe again. And or someone else that their arm wasn't long enough to shoot the rifle, shoot themselves in the head. Like, I was hearing these stories, you know, and I thought, if Betty Sue falls under a train in Queensland, no one's going to know. They were desperate for me to go because of what I put the light on. The rock side turned over, and I didn't do that. I went into the hat factory and worked there on the gotcha cars, and I'd get told, I'd have people standing over me, intimidating me, going tell me a story about this sergeant that was going to whistleblow on the abortion squad. Apparently there was an abortion squad in the 70s, and there was quids changing hands there, and he was sitting on the toilet one day and he shot himself in the head, and they kept going, Debbie, that could happen to you one day when you're sitting on the toilet. And so they weren't mucking around. I'd totally pissed them off. I'd given times, dates, places of what was going on, and in Internal Affairs didn't want to know about it. They were just going, and they used to whenever there was a quote, they'd go, there's a whale in the harbour, and that was the sign to say Internal Affairs were around watching you, and that was police code for watch out for what you're doing. So this was a time where, yeah, it was red hot. It was red hot. How they didn't kill me, I think there'd been too many big messes, you know. There'd been the shooting of Michael Drew, the killing of Sally Ann Huckstep, Leanne Franchi's shooting. I know that there was conversations about whether to kill me or not. And, you know, it was just a really crap time in my life.
Absolutely. But I want to go back and touch on, so you were given a commissioner's citation for your work that you did in the gaming squad. What was that like for you? Was that a proud moment?
I was working for George Freeman, doing the gates, the securities to keep the cops out in one of his gaming houses in the Barclay Club in the Cross, and I was working with another girl, and you know, there was one of the guys that got us a job, and I don't know how I ended up. They were paying for us to live in a unit at Bondi, and this guy anyway took us back to his place. He had this big box of jewelry, and there was a tiara in the box. There was big jewelry. There was all robberies, house robberies from around the eastern suburbs, and I thought, these are people's heirlooms. These are people's, you know, stuff. This is important that we get this back to them. And he was going, oh, this is my old age policy, you know, this is what I'm having for when I retire, you know. He was an old guy. He had it on his bed, and he showed us, and it was ridiculous. This stuff there was hundreds of thousands back then in jewelry. And when the cops did do the raid on that flat, the box was empty. How did he get tipped off? You know, I was working the gates one night, and one of my old gigs informants from when I was working in the Cross earlier came in, and he was like bent over laughing when he saw me, because he knew I was a cop, and I had to get 20-cent coin. I don't know if it's a 20-cent and a 10-cent. I remember looking for silver coins to be able to use a public phone box, and I told him I was going to the toilet, and I ran down the street, and I found a public phone box in the Cross, and I rang a sergeant and said, I'm in trouble, you know, my cover's blowing, and he just abused me, you know, for waking him up. And he said, get back in there. And I said, but what if he tells them, you know? And this was another time where a crook, it's like the paddy wagon situation where they took pity on a young girl, and he didn't give me up. He could have got money for telling them who I was. And they did the raid the next day, and it was a bit of a disaster. You know, every time I did a job in the gaming squad, they'd know we were coming. Like, someone would tip them off and let them know we were coming for money, you know, and from the cops that we were working on them. And you know, I went to get that award, and one of the other people there was on drugs, like a chronic addict, and I had to help dress them and get them there. You know, they were just a mess. Like, this is where there was no welfare for the mental state of people. Like, doing surveillance undercover work takes a big toll, and you should only do it for a couple of years. You know, and I spent about 7 years of my career doing that sort of work, and it knocks you. It really does.
I've had a few. So a good friend of mine who you know as well, Keith Banks, and he was up in Queensland. He did undercovers up there, and he even said it himself. He said that he ended up, he had to get out because he said it's not and he spoke a lot about that there was no support for undercovers back then. They didn't. Yeah, they didn't care. He said you were classed as, as Keith said, it was, you dispense, like, yep, see you later, goodbye, don't care, just collateral damage, really.
Yeah.
And
we've burnt you out. Get the next young stupid idiot.
That's right.
To risk their lives.
And for you, like, talk me through that, Deborah. Being undercover, like, you're playing a role. Like, it's not a normal life. Like, how hard is it to keep that facade going for as long as you did?
I drank. You know, and even in the gaming squad, they used to give us tax-free drinking money. We had to do 3 pubs every Saturday and Wednesday.
Yeah, right.
You know, and I was in the surveillance team there for about 3.5 years, and it's like there was no welfare. It was just like, your job is to go out and drink.
Yeah, right.
You know, and I've heard about cops in the surveillance unit in New Zealand doing a class action because of their drug addiction. Like, you know, it's like you buy drugs, you've got to have a taste, you've got to, before you buy. And it's like, there was nothing. There was no... I remember getting sent... I was a mess at one stage, getting sent to a psychologist because they could see how broken I was. And I was told to put makeup on. And the old sergeant borrowed makeup from another woman. And they made me put this makeup on and go see the psychologist. And I came back and I was absolutely... I could barely stand. And he said, see, there you go, you put makeup on, that means you're all right. If you're putting makeup on in the morning... you're okay. And they'd forced me to put it on, and it killed me to go and do it. And so it was just to cover their ass that I was okay because I'd put makeup on. So what was that? What was that? I don't know. I don't know, but I survived it.
Absolutely. And you talk through your book, and you lost a couple of your police friends, like female friends, in the job, and talk about that, Deb. What was that like? And playing on your mind of that, you know, you saw a couple of them get raped, and how was that on your young, like, still being a young police officer?
It was the boys were out of control. They didn't know what to do with these girls just coming in. And, you know, in Underbelly it's portrayed a pool table, but it was actually a kitchen table. Bench, one of those laminated benches that she was handcuffed to. I was talking to an old policewoman the other day, and she was just saying, I remember a guy I was working with, and he'd make me give him a kiss before he'd let me out of the police car. And she said, I was so young and stupid, I thought I had to give him a kiss before I was allowed to get out of the police car when we went somewhere. You know, like, the boys were just out of control. Like, they were boys. They were, you know, we'd have a cook up on night shift and have a few drinks, and they were just silly. They'd never had worked with women before. The women actually settled the culture down. The women actually improved the New South Wales Police Force. The more women that came in, the better it got with that sort of rubbish, you know.
Yeah, right.
But in the end, I had to take the police to court for sexual harassment and pregnancy discrimination, because it was just so horrendous. I lost a baby girl, and the doctor did a report saying, you know, that the stress that I was put under at work was one of the major contributing factors to that. There was nothing wrong with the child. I shouldn't have lost her. And I still blame totally the New South Wales Police for me losing my daughter.
Yeah, right. Yeah, as you say, Deb, different times and different, the way you were treated back then so different to how it is today. You mentioned Underbelly, and most people have watched Underbelly, and the Bayer boys were portrayed in Underbelly.
Yeah.
Deb, what were they like in real life? Were they as intimidating as they are portrayed on Underbelly?
Look, Louis Bayer was a good bloke. He used to pay for lots of drinks and meals. It's like that Chinese restaurant meal. Everyone was relieved when Billy went, "Oh, I'll pick up the tab," And he did. He paid for a lot of meals. And he wanted to give me a leather jacket one time. He was a good bloke. He was friendly. He was nice. It was a time of change where you had Lenny McPherson as the head of the cross, and then it was getting handed over to the Lebanese. And Billy Bayer was a different kettle of fish. He was caught, and this is the technology thing. He was caught on camera with drugs. He went to jail for a number of years. He was. I only ever saw him in the darkness, hiding almost behind curtains. He was a very secretive, silent man. The cops that were dealing with him, the corrupt cops, were very wary of him and very respectful of him. Billy was one of the boys. They'd be sitting around openly being seen with him, and it was like the Ibrahim's. I remember sitting drinking one night with Sam Ibrahim, and one of the cops came up to me and said, "He's fucking nuts, get away from him." And I didn't even know who he was at the time. It was like the cops and the crooks mixed a lot, and that's what they had. The sorting squad, and they had the vice squad, and and this is the sort of stuff Roger got himself in trouble with. He was caught on phone taps, and why he had to eventually not become commissioner and leave the police force. But when the Royal Commission happened, they closed down whole squads. They closed down the gaming squad. That was a 60-man squad. Yeah, that was a 60-man squad, and they closed it down. They closed down the vice squad, the sorting squad, a surveillance squad. Like, they closed down whole sections. They gave an amnesty. There was that much stuff. They just couldn't keep running for all the money it costs the Royal Commission forever. And they just went, "We'll give you an amnesty, resign and not have a pension, and we'll let you go." And over 300 cops took that option. 19 people were arrested. 19 people killed themselves. And I always point out Judge Yellman, who was called up, and in the morning he hung himself in the front yard, and he was always pulled out of Central Railway Station with young boys in the toilets there, and special squad would be called down when he was caught and walk him out. So he was above the law. And when they started touching on pedophilia, that's when they shut it all down. Franca Arena, lost her political career, and it took 20 years for him to, again, then look at a Royal Commission into pedophilia. Because that's how many big, high-powered people of money and power were involved in the pedophile rings. And we saw the Dolly Dunn stuff, but when I became a whistleblower, it was because my fingerprints were on Lenny McPherson's wife's gun licence application, and because of I was sitting with a senior cop, and he said to me, "What's the worst thing you've ever done, Deb?" And I told him some funny stories, and he turned around and he was very pissed at the bar, and he said, "I take money off pedophiles." And due to my father's history, my blood ran cold, and I said to him, "You've got kids," and he went, yeah, but I know who the pedophiles are." And it was those two incidences in a short time span that made me go, I didn't know what a whistleblower was, but I've got to report this shit. This is just all too big. Like, what the hell's going on? And when I spoke to Internal Affairs, they knew everything I was talking about. That was the annoying thing. And they treated me with disrespect and contempt and shoved me with Drury to shut me up. So
at that point, I'll just go. Had you been at fraud at that point, or you were coming to fraud?
Well, it got to the point where I was dying, literally dying. Just, I was out of the police environment. I was getting a hard time. I was in fear of my life. And I got sober. I got into Alcoholics Anonymous. I was going to meetings every day. It took me 4.5 years to get sober. I'd get 8-9 months up and something bad had happened and I'd go, this is so bad, I'm going to pick up a drink. And I'd have one night on the blinder. My last drink, I tried to drink in every pub in Balmain. You cannot drink in every pub in Balmain in one night. I tried hard and that was my last drink, over 31 years ago.
Yeah, right.
So, it's been a lot of water under the bridge. There's been a lot of days where I'd like a drink and I haven't picked up. But it's been very bloody hard,
Absolutely.
Getting sober's been one of the hardest things I've ever done. And
so really the gotcha cars were killing you. And then...
and I had an ectopic pregnancy at that time. I had a month in hospital. And it was a very sobering experience that month to just process how shit my life was. And that... I was either going to lay down and die or get up and live. And I decided, I done all those years at uni. I was still doing uni. I just went, I haven't worked this hard to get to here to let them, they just wanted to stop my career,
To lay down and
die, literally.
Yeah.
And I nearly did, they removed the fallopian tube, it had burst. I was bleeding into my guts. No one would have cared if I died. And it was a very sobering experience. And so I went, well, I'm a detective. I'll go the fraud squad. And
so do you think, Deb, your childhood and everything you'd been, that's where your resilience came from to stand up and go, I'm not going to lay down? And do you think that's where? Do you think that's where it came from?
Hey, after Irene, Roger, it was like, if he dished up to a bloke what I'd copped over the time, like, and the rest of them, and they wouldn't do to a bloke what they'd done to me. They thought because I was a woman they could intimidate me and shut me up. And and I thought the fraud squad, well, they wear suits there. They've got to be about what can happen to the bloody fraud squad. They're just doing bank stuff and that. I want to pull my act together, get classy, bought some nice clothes, turn up the fraud squad, and I'm doing a job, not, I don't know, 18 months later, and I'm in Perth, and I'm sitting in the casino, in this beautiful motel room, and I'm going, gee, the cops have spent a lot of money on this job, giving me this beautiful motel room. And all of a sudden the penny drops and I realised I was doing a job for Roger's private inquiry agency. It wasn't a fraud job, it was something for him.
Oh, right.
And it's just like everywhere I bloody went, Roger, there'd be something. There would be some bullshit and it was just ridiculous, and so there was dramas. Each place I went, he had his finger everywhere. Even when he left the cops, he was still doing his garbage, and it was just unbelievable, and that was a Jurassic Park. Like, they'd only ever had 5 women there, and when I got pregnant, they just went mental. Like, they were just like, well, you got to resign now, girl. Girls leave when they get engaged, and I wasn't engaged at the time. And what they dished up to me, and it was unbelievable. But Roger had quite a few goes at me in the media. Had quite a few goes at me, full stop. He didn't like me. He didn't like me because I would stand up and I'd speak my truth, and I talked to like I wasn't intimidated by him because I'm autistic. I didn't realise, like, I was used to dangerous people.
Yep.
I was used to psychopaths. The guy was a psychopath, and he was very cultured, great piano player, highly educated, very charming, and the utmost scariest person. Not as scary as Irene, but a close second.
Yeah, right. And for you, the fraud squad, as you said, was dinosaurs. And I want to go forward, Deb, because I want to go to the Royal Commission. And how were you approached to be part of the Royal Commission?
Kimball Cook. Good old Kimmy. Kimmy was my boss in the surveillance unit towards the end at the surveillance. And he'd come from radio and he'd come back into detectives, and he'd taken over the surveillance unit. And there was just turmoil with the leadership, and he really tried to do the right thing and get everything above board and going good, and he was copping a hard time from other members on the team. And I went away to Bathurst to study for a week, and we all had our designated police cars, and there was 2 officers off the floor that we were working on this big job on this SP bookie, and there was big money involved because their ledgers were the most important thing. Even if they were arrested, if they didn't have their ledger, a copy of their ledger, they couldn't pay out their bets. And that would, people had laid money with them. If they didn't know who had laid what and for what bet, it was the end of them. And so, anyway, there ended up being $10,000 in the boot of my car. And Kim had been offered a share of it, and he didn't know whether it was a setup or what was going on. And the only people he could go to was the Highway Patrol to arrest these 2 cops. This is all groundbreaking crap, because this is just, cops didn't arrest other cops. And, there was death threats afterwards, and it just got so bad. I was scared for my physical safety. That's when I jumped ship and went to Parramatta for my own safety. And it was like going from the frying pan into the fire, going to Parramatta. It was red hot at detective's office. And so, anyway, Kim had dealings with the Maloo matter and that. And he approached me. He said, Deb, you know lots about police corruption. And I'm an autistic, stupid young blonde. And I'm going, yeah, I know everything. I know what everyone's doing and what's going on. And I was ambushed. So I was the only serving New South Wales police officer who gave stat decks to John Hatton, 8 stat decks. And I went with John Hatton. We went in a 4-seater plane to Canberra. We went to so many cops, and they all said the same thing. Oh, I've got a wife and kids. I've got a mortgage. I can't say anything. Yeah, I know what's going on, but I can't say anything. And in the end, John had waited 20 years to get the balance of power with independence. Like, he had this short, small window of time to get a Royal Commission into police corruption in New South Wales, and he got it. And he was there at midnight arguing, and all he had was my 8 step decks of current corruption in the New South Wales Police Force. We had Arthur King from the Nita Nelson era supporting, and we used to have these little team meetings, and he was locked in a boot of a car overnight. He nearly died over those days. And Morgan Ogg, he's deceased now. He was a reporter at the time. He was on our team. And we begged people, just join us, just in this campaign to get a Royal Commission. And not one other serving New South Wales police officer would. And he went, Deb, I'm just going to have to go with you. That's all I got. I've got your signature. I'm going to go. And we got the Wood Royal Commission. And history, happened. And it was the first time ever that, and this is the technology bit, that they used cameras to film people. And people remember Chucky Fowler and that, slipping on the milkshake, and Trevor Haken. Trevor Haken was another member of Alcoholics Anonymous later. He was a big drinker too, another detective from the Cross. And they'd got him cold. And so he wasn't a whistleblower, but he did roll over, and he did set people up to film taking money. And every day it was, what's going to happen now out of the Royal Commission? There'd be all these films and photos come out of corruption and money changing hands and that. And so everything I said was true. Everything I said was true that was happening. There wasn't just a couple of bad apples. It wasn't just me speaking out. There was systemic problems with the New South Wales Police Force in their plainclothes officers in certain sections. And so, they about 2 years into it, in 96, I get called up and I'm 26 weeks pregnant. And they got me in the box and they're grilling me for 6.5 days, and I'm sick, I'm pregnant, I've had the flu. I didn't realise I had blood poisoning at the time. And I'm standing there and I'm coughing and I'm coughing and I'm coughing. I kept going out. I used to have to stop giving my evidence. And I was coughing. And anyway, I was in the box at one stage and my water broke at 26 weeks. And I I'm just going, I've got to go. I just left and I didn't know what to do. I went home, I got into bed and I started going, I've got contractions. I started timing them. I started timing. It was 3 minutes apart.
Yeah, right.
So I got into a big Nissan Patrol and I'm going over the Harbour Bridge trying to get to the hospital, to the Mater at North Sydney, and from Balmain, and I'm having contractions over the bridge. I'm wobbling over lines. I'm going to have a head on here. And I get to the hospital and then they take me by ambulance to the Royal North Shore because this baby's 26 weeks, and it was just bloody awful, a very lonely, horrible time. It was just revolting how I was treated and what happened, and I didn't know whether my baby was going to die or not. And especially back in those days, he was 28 years old yesterday. So he survived, and from being 1 kilo, he's now 130 kilos, and he's 6'4", but he has brain damage and he has severe autism and other complex needs and epilepsy, and I blame a lot of his complex health needs on the New South Wales Police Force and the Royal Commission, and the fact that they had me in the box with endless barristers arguing that there was no corruption in the police after they'd already ran all the films on TV. And this is the first time in a police commission that they'd ever used videotapes to set up and catch officers in the act of corruption. First time worldwide. The whole world took on the practices of the Wood Royal Commission. This was all new, breaking ground, and it was massive stuff. But I walked in and my husband came in a couple of times, but he went to work. I was there in the box giving evidence, and he went, I've got to go back to the drug squad. By this time, he was under the wing of Michael Drury, who Roger had shot in 82, because as the husband of a whistleblower, he was copping a hard time. And he was even copping a bit of a hard time in the drug squad. And he's going, the boys are going to, if I go to court and sit there and support you, they're not going to be happy. And so I was wandering in pregnant on my own, day after day, giving evidence, and I just collapsed. I just broke down and my waters broke. It was too much, and no one considered the welfare of myself or my child. No one in the world.
And for you, Deb, in that time of, because you were in the media, you were, your head was above the parapet. Were you in fear of your life? Were you in fear that they were going to knock you off?
I remember one night going out at Balmain, and the cops were sitting on me. The cops were trying to get something on me. I remember people coming in, following me to AA meetings. And I thought, if I stand up and go, there's 2 cops at the back of the room, they're going to think I'm drunk or nuts, And one time they were sitting off the car, and I came out with a cup of coffee, and I said, look, I feel sorry for you guys. I'm the most boring person in the world. Because I'd done surveillance for years. I always, naturally for years, did any surveillance, kept checking my mirrors, kept checking what car was behind me. I went out to them and said, you want a cup of coffee? Here's a cup of coffee. You poor bastards have been sitting out here for hours. The cops were trying to get something on me to discredit me. And even in the box, the detectives the barristers were going, she's a drunk, she's an alcoholic and all this. And in the end, Wood and Urquhart had to go, look, yeah, okay, she's an alcoholic. Is she sober? And they'd go, yeah. And is what she's saying the truth? And they'd go, yeah. And they go, well, let's get on with the show. They tried everything to throw mud at me just because I was a whistleblower, just because I told the truth, and it's like, You know, like I say, I haven't had a drink for 31 years. I am boring. Well, I'm not. I'm full of life.
Yeah, 100%.
I wouldn't be alive now if, you know, I tried to be a big city detective, and as a woman in those days, it didn't fit well. Not for me. Not with autism. And, you know, I've had an amazing life. It's been a great journey, you know, and...
There's more to come.
There's 60 from 60. Watch out, guys.
Yeah,
Stay tuned. I'm writing another book.
But for you, Deb, was... Because in 96 you medically discharged from the police, is that right?
I was.
What was that like for you after when you joined in 84, you had big ambitions to, you know, go and... Like, your police career didn't end the way that you wanted it to, but what was that like for you when you were trying to transition?
Look, it was a lonely, devastating, horrible time. And they wouldn't finish me up. And they just had me on the payroll. And I said, fix the corruption. They'd go, no, we just put out the spot fires. You're the spot fire. And I'm going, well, fix it. I want to work. I want to come and work. And they're going, well, we can't give you a safe working environment. They had me photocopying in headquarters. And it was just humiliating as a, you know, detective. And people would come in and ridicule me. It was just bastardisation at its best. And I saw Tony Lau, who was the commissioner. It was a police day at a church in Balmain. I lived in Balmain. And I organised a photographer from, I don't know, it was the Herald or the Telegraph at the time. And anyway, there's a big line of people to shake his hand at the end. And I was in the line, and I came up to him, and I wanted him to shake my hand. He refused to shake my hand. He would not shake my hand. So I got at the end of the line again. The photographer's behind a tree waiting, you know, because they wanted a photo of him shaking my hand. And this is a man that said, you know, sometimes I cross against the lights. Sometimes I do the wrong thing. Well, he certainly did the wrong thing by Deborah Locke. And I was last in the line. He gets there and he's looking at me, and he's just standing there glaring at me, and he wouldn't shake my hand. And his wife's there going, go on, Tony, shake a hand, just shake a hand. So he shakes my hand, and this photographer jumped out from behind the tree and took the photo. And this is a photo that's in the archives, you know, it's there. I think it's in my book. And Tony just started screaming. He just, you know, because his photo was taken shaking my hand. And the next day I got a phone call, and they said, you got your pension, you're out. That was it. And no one came and saw me. No one spoke to me. No, there was no finishing up interview. There was nothing. It was just that phone call. Just, you're gone. And all I wanted to do was be a cop. All I wanted to do was do my job, and they just wouldn't let me. They wouldn't let me because I was honest. Like, how crazy is that? Yeah, shoot the messenger.
I'm just shaking my head. Like, I can't believe that. Yeah, honesty is it's an honest job. That's why you joined. It was you're a police officer. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to lock the criminals up and report on crime. Like,
well, because I took on Roger, my career was over. Just bloody crazy.
I'm shaking. I just can't. I can't believe that's like treated lower than a criminal for just having a moral compass to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you're lower than low. Like, you're lower than a criminal.
And even today, like, I'm not welcomed at any police function or anything because I helped start the Police Royal Commission. You know, and it's just awful. Like I've been ostracised by my biological family, and I've been ostracised by my police family. And it's like, just lucky I've got autism. And I don't do the social cues, and I don't need people to justify my existence, you know.
Absolutely.
I soldier on. I do it a day at a time. You know, I could have drank and died over all this, and a lot of people have over less.
Absolutely.
But I don't want the bastards to... Yeah, having the best life. I've had a wonderful time. I've travelled so much and raised my kids and done uni and I just take a joy out of every day. Like, it's all a bonus. I am so on borrowed time. I nearly died so many times in my life. And I'm like a cat. It's like, meow. I fall on my feet again. And I just keep going to the sadness of certain people, And
Absolutely.
It's like, the best revenge is to have a great life.
Absolutely. And for people many years ago would have watched Underbelly, The Golden Mile. And Deb, how accurate was that portrayal of what it was like?
I was working with the writing team, and I sold my book rights to the third Underbelly, and actually Chuckles was he played a cop in Underbelly 2 and 3 as an extra. A lot of cops at the time were doing some extra work that I knew, and he played a good cop in one, a bad cop in the other. And my daughter played a junkie prostitute in the third one too. So proud. And I was telling them stuff, and they're just going, we can't do that. That is so out there. No one will believe it. Like, that's so mad. And it's like truth is stranger than fiction. Like some of the stories I would tell them, they're just going, no. It's like when I wrote my book, they just cut so much out because they're just going, people won't believe how crazy all the shit that people got up to, and it's sort of, but it was very realistic. Sheree Cassidy that played me, she got my laugh. We spent time with her. She worked for me later on at a women's refuge, teaching drama to street kids, and it was a great experience, and that was the thing that Roger had a go at me in the media about too, was when I got my surveillance team to strip off and yeah, but I was a big skinny dipper in those days. Being autistic, sensory stuff, I don't want to wear clothes, and I even lived in Mossman for a short time, and I'd go to the nude beach and that. But this was like 9 o'clock on Balmoral Beach with little kids and mothers around. Like, I don't know. I'd been drinking I don't know what to hell. This is me at my darkest. And they've told them to meet me on the beach. And I've told them to strip off. And we're going for a swim. We've all left loaded guns on the beach. Like, this was total mental health breakdown stuff. And they all did it. It was just like, oh, okay, we've been directed to do this. And then Roger's there going, it never happened. And, like, he was picking it apart. Like, they wrote Underbelly, they did the connection with Kim and I, and it was like they had to work stuff. They wanted to do a bit of the story about that I lost a bet and I ran around naked around the house or the building or the pub or whatever it was. That they were working on a theme, and I went, oh, no, that's ridiculous. Like, that's going to make me look stupid. We're not going to do that. But I said, but here's a true story about getting everyone to strip off. And they go, oh, that's even crazier. Like, we'll put that in. And it's like, it's a glimpse, it's an essence of a time, the 80s and 90s, before technology really took up. Because you got to look at later with Roger. Like, that was like a movie. I went into the trial with Roger and Glenn most days, and they put together all the street cameras and the cameras at the yard when they shot Jamie Gow and killed him. And it was like a movie when they put it all together of just, people don't realise how much with technology now, and people were going, wasn't Roger stupid, but I think he just got away with so much for so long that killing someone and having consequences for it was out of his radar. Even he thought he was an untouchable god, and it finally caught up with him. But I'm just glad there wasn't Facebook around when I was a kid.
So, looking back, Deb, on your career and the way that it ended, was joining the police still the best decision you ever made? Looking back now?
Absolutely, because I did make a bloody difference, to my own detriment, but I did make a difference. I shone a light on the fact that the culture boys club was out of control. I was there at that cutting edge when women were just coming in, and maybe if I wasn't the person I was, it took someone with my personality to be able to keep going when the hits came. And there was certainly a lot of hits. But if I'd stayed in Glenorrhea, you know, my grandparents died in the old farmhouse from alcoholism, and my parents the same. And I would have just continued the generational cycle. You know, I would have died. I would have drank myself to death and just died of shame and yeah, you know, like I never should have had the life I had coming from Glenorrhea and the family I did. And it's just been a great ride.
Well, knowing all that you've been through and knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self, and would she listen?
I'd tell her to shut her big mouth, but she wouldn't listen. And yeah, don't drink. Drinking's bad, you know. And it took me till 25 to even comprehend. Like when I thought I was going to die with that ectopic pregnancy, I used to. I'm an atheist, and I used to say, look, if I'm just about to die, I'm going to tell a prayer. I'm going to pray to God just to cover my bases in case there is a heaven. And they told me to go to the toilet, and they were taking me into surgery and that I may not make it. And was there anyone I wanted to ring? Well, I had no one to ring. And I went into the toilet cubicle and I prayed for the first time in my life. And I prayed that I'd be a better person if I lived, if God let me live. And if I'd known at that time that meant not drinking, I would have said, oh, kill me now, you know. It's just like, come on. It still took me a couple of years to get fully sober. But my journey started. Then. So, you know, would I change anything? No. I have a great life today. You know, I used to be so sad and worried about the future for my son who's got brain damage. And, you know, he has the best life, better than anyone else. We have so much fun. We travel together. Every day he gets up with a big smile on his face and goes, what am I doing today? You know, where am I going? And he has an exciting, great life every day. He has no concept of time or money. He has no stress or worry. He's still watching I've been watching the Wiggles for over 30 years. I used to like them when they were the cockroaches. And I remember when they first started, I was standing there going, what the hell are these idiots think they're doing, you know? You're kidding. Like, are they nuts? I did not know 30 years later I'd still be watching the Wiggles. I was dancing the mashed potato this morning with my boy. So I'm getting older and older, but I think it keeps me young.
Yep.
You know, it keeps me young. I love life, you know. So they didn't win. They didn't win. They tried to destroy me. There was evil people that tried to destroy me and crush me. And I look at all the idiots that I used to be with drinking and all the good old times when, you know, we'd all sit around talking shit. And they're all either dead, nuts, or in jail. So I'm blessed. I've been blessed. I'm a storyteller, and I've got stories to tell.
Well, you mentioned your book, and you wrote your book. It's called Watching the Detectives, One Woman's Journey Through Sydney's Criminal Underworld. What was that like for you and the writing process? And was that where you could finally put all that had happened throughout your career, you could actually, it made sense and you could put it down on paper?
Oh, it was so cathartic. It was, especially for a person who couldn't write a name till 10, I was just thinking, how can I do this, you know? And when you read the book, it's written in my voice and how I talk. And you can tell that I wrote it. You just go, oh, my God, you know? And I didn't hold back, so I put everything in it, but they cut so much out. And yet there's still lots of good stuff in it. So I recommend it. It's a good read.
I've read it. Yep, it's a good read. Yep.
Thank you. And I've read your book,
yes.
And I just love it. You know, fellow authors, we pat each other on the back because it is a huge thing.
It is.
It is massive to get your story out. And, you know, it was a hard time. And it's a good show of, you know, like cops are amazing people and they are heroes, and all first responders are. And this is what your show is about, first responders. And every day they get up and put their life on the line, literally. And they do. And people don't
For not a lot of money.
Not for shit money. Absolutely. But
I think, Deb, it's too, and sorry to cut you off, I think we've all got a willingness to serve to help others. And that's what it is. That's what it comes down to being a first responder. It's a willingness to give back and help others. And that's why you did it, and that's why I do it.
yeah.
And that's what it is. There's no take money out of it. Yeah, we do it because we want to help people.
Make a difference.
Exactly.
Make a difference.
Exactly
yeah.
right. And for you, so you've written your first book, and there's more coming. I know there's more coming.
I've been busy working this
yes,
morning.
and you're part of Whistleblowers Australia. And how has that been, being part of Whistleblowers Australia? And how has that helped you moving forward and processing what happened to you in your career?
Look, Dr. Jean Linane started Whistleblowers Australia, and she was my psychiatrist in Balmain. She lived in Birchgrove, and she went, when I first went to her, she went, "You're a whistleblower." You know? And I'm going, "Yeah, apparently." And she said, "Oh, we're just starting up," and that, I think they'd had about 2 meetings of Whistleblowers Australia, and they had a couple of meetings in Glebe, and then because I had little kid, I went, "Come back to my place and have it in my lounge room, and then I can come to the meetings." And so for a long time the meetings were held in my lounge room, and over the years I've spoken to and supported a number of whistleblowers, and today it's run by Jean's passed, and Cynthia Cardell runs it now, and she's an amazing woman and has a legal degree and law degree, and she's just so wise with wisdom, and the support you get from these guys, I'm totally burnt out with it, but what they do is, like, it's with large bureaucracies, this happens every time. When you're the bad apple and you point out a problem, people don't thank you for pointing out the defects of character. They crush you. Let's just put out that problem. The whistleblower becomes the problem. And I've seen so many cases, and, even cops that have put their hand up and get crushed like I did, get the same treatment. And, now I know, do it anonymously. Don't put your head up in the firing line. But back in those days, I was just like, when Kimball Cook approached me, I was just like, yeah, I know stuff. And he saw that as an easy target, because I was a young girl. What other idiot would have, in that environment, have spoken up? And I did. I just went, yeah, this is just so bad. It needs to be stopped. I didn't realise that the New South Wales Police at the time weren't prepared to stop it, and it took a royal commission from an independent MP outside of the police force and the government to make it put a halt to it. They had to bring someone from overseas, from England, to run the ship, because there was no one fit, no one that they could put in charge of the helm at the time after all that had gone down with the Royal Commission. I mean, so if anyone wants to say there was just a few bad apples in the cross, I just find that totally offensive, because it's bullshit, absolute bullshit. There was a problem and it needed to be sorted, and it was a lot bigger than anyone ever imagined. A lot of people just went to ground when it happened, and but Whistleblowers Australia, like, I'd recommend anyone approaching them if they're thinking about blowing the whistle, because you've got to be it's a very dangerous game to play.
Absolutely. And you also were a representative on the New South Wales Police Internal Witness Advisory Council.
Yeah, I was, with Jean Linane.
What was that like?
It was, they used to meet every month, and then they met every 4 months, and it was just, after the Royal Commission, it was just, it was disrespectful, the attitude. They took it as, they did it for a while just to appease what had happened and what had come out in the Royal Commission, but from senior police, there was an attitude of, we were just a nuisance and a joke. Very disheartening. Absolutely.
For, as we've said throughout the podcast, having a moral compass, doing the right thing. Sometimes doing the right thing is perceived as the wrong thing, but it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And
I had to live with myself. I know I can sleep at night. There's people out here that'll be listening to this podcast, and I hope they feel a little bit sick and don't sleep well tonight for things they've said and done.
Absolutely. And Deb, what are you doing now, and what are your plans going into the future? What's life like now for you?
Well, when I left the police, after a while I did spend a number of years working with women and children escaping domestic violence, and I was the manager at Elsie Women's Refuge for 5 years. I still do support and mentor people in this field, and I play a really bad game of golf, and I go out, remember at the cricket ground, got that in the divorce. He said to me, "You don't want those tickets, do you?" And I went, "Well, maybe they'll be good for my old age retirement." And I'm having a ball. I get out there in the spa, do ice baths.
Yep.
Watch the game. I was at the Swans game the other night.
Yep.
I go for the Roosters.
Yep.
And life is bloody good, But I've started writing. I had a book that had a suppression order on it, and that broke me a bit after working on it for years. And I went, I'm never going to write again. Well, the itch is back, and I've got stuff to say, and I've got actually 2 on the go. And I'm going, I've just got to get one out of my head and done.
Yeah.
And then, but the other one needs to be done this year. So I've got a bit of pressure on me. I'm spending a few hours every day working, writing, which is, you've got to have a purpose in life.
100%.
And, and my purpose now is writing. And I love it. And I've got books in the roof that I've written before, and I'm going to go over them the next few years and get them published. And,
beautiful.
And I want to get back onto the speaking circuit. And there's always more travel with the boy.
Mm-hmm.
Hayes is my joy.
Yep.
And so while I'm alive, I just want to give him the best life I can, because, I worry what's going to happen to him when I do die.
Mm-hmm.
He's so spoilt and used to such a good lifestyle.
Yeah.
But at least the Wiggles will be there. He loves the Wiggles. So it's hard being the parent of a disabled child, and this is, part of the fallout from being a whistleblower and being an honest cop. He's not having the future he should have had. And it's just different. And so I need to stay sane and sober and healthy as long as I can, so that I can be his mum and care for him.
It's
big job.
Yeah, it is. But it's good to see, Deb, that, and I like to highlight that on the podcast too, is that you can go through, and veterans, first responders, and people who need to hear your story and many other stories, that you can go through shit and come out the other side, and there is light at the end of the tunnel, and you can have a good life after you've gone through the shit. And you've just highlighted what you want to do now and what you're doing going forward. And that's what it is, Deb. That's what it is. That's the resilience shown, that, yeah, you can be dealt shit, but you can also come through it and come out a better person than when you walked into it.
Look, absolutely. And what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Exactly.
And I pulled a guy one night off the Harbour Bridge. They didn't put a harness on me. The cliff rescue was there, and I went over the railings, and I don't smoke, and I was smoking cigarettes with him for about an hour, trying to talk him back. And, and I kept saying to him, you could do this. You can jump, but there is going to be better days. With time, it doesn't matter how fucking bad it gets. There's always another day. There's always another. With time, the pain doesn't completely go away, but it deadens. You don't know what's coming. Why not hang around and see what's on offer? Because life's short as it is.
Yeah.
It's very, very short. And I didn't know mine would be so long. I never dreamed. My grandmother died at 60. My mother at 59. I never dreamed. The people I've upset in the past. I remember one night my father put a rifle at me. He was going to shoot me. And, I have nearly died so many times. It's ridiculous for one person. And, you know, I mean, he was really drunk. He was in blackout when he did it, but he nearly killed me. And I've obviously got books to write. So watch out. Yeah. Watch out. I might be writing about you.
But I think, Deb, it's a great point you touch on is that, you know my personal struggles, you know what I've been through, and you're right, it is. There's the good days outweigh the bad, and there are better things. Like, you know, who would have thought, Deb, that if I had have ended my life 10 years ago, you and I would never have done this podcast. There would have been people that have never read my book. Like, life, you've got to make your life though too. You've got to go out and you've got to do the work. You've got to make your life happen. Life doesn't, life doesn't. You've got to make the life happen, and you've got to live the good life, and you've got to go after it. But I think, as you say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and it is. There's some great things to be done in this world, and I want to finish with a quote, Deb, that I believe sums up your story. And Deb, your story is one of true grit, determination, and never giving in. And you've showed moral courage when it would have been easy to turn and run away. And you've served your state of New South Wales with honour, and you brought pride to your family. And you are an absolute role model. And the quote is, "You will never do anything in life without courage. It is the greatest quality of the mind next to honour. Moral courage is the highest expression of humanity." Deb, I believe this sums up your story and what you've done in your career. And I want to thank you for coming on True Blue Conversations and sharing your story. It's been an absolute honour and a privilege. So, Deb, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Adam. You're a legend.
Thanks, Deb.
Welcome, loyal listeners of True Blue Conversations. Today's episode is proudly sponsored by Australian Warfighter Coffee. Veteran owned and run, driven by a simple yet powerful motto: people over profit. Every dollar goes towards supporting veterans and first responder charity groups. Head on over to AustralianWarfighters.com and use the code TrueBlue for your exclusive discount. Because let's face it, any other coffee is just brown sadness water. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of True Blue Conversations with your host, Adam Bloom. See you on the front line.